of people think they need a large staff in order to have a chief of staff. But the reality is, as a CEO, especially early on, you're dealing with so much. You really need to be heads up looking at the vision forward. But you also need someone who is heads down making that vision a reality. And so that's why, yes, it's typically found in larger organizations, or historically, it's found in larger organizations and big corporations and the government. It's found in a lot of different industries, but it's growing for startup founders because they realize, hey, I need this. Like, I have these great visions I want to implement. I used to work for someone and I was in a project management role, but it was really, as I look back on it, it was a de facto, essentially, I was a chief of staff. And one of our things we said was he was the chief clinical director. It was for a dental organization. He would make it up and I would make it real. And then there was
Mm,
another layer, the administrative layer, that would make it recurring.
right. And
So
then
that's sort of what the chief of staff
administrative.
does. Mhm.
So the administrative would be on the EA side of things, the executive
Mhm.
assistant side of things.
Exactly. So they'd be making it recurring. So the CEO has a vision. They have something they want to execute on, but they don't have the time. They don't have the bandwidth. Maybe they don't even have the interest in it, but they know it's something that needs to be done. And so then at the chief of staff level, they're taking that vision, making it real. And then whether it's going to a PM, an EA, someone else to make it a recurring process within the organization.
And what type of person is great at being a chief of staff in your experience?
So that's a really good question because a lot of people think that they need an MBA to be a chief of staff. They need a certain type of background, but there's really no one path to becoming a chief of staff. What's really most important are some of the characteristics. So, like someone who is willing to get their hands dirty because
Mm,
it's a strategic role, but it's also tactical. So, you're not just like consulting, you're also doing the work and executing. So, it's someone who can be a trusted advisor because that's an important part of the role too as a chief of staff. You're the confidant to the CEO. So they can run things by you. You're sort of an unbiased sounding board. It's someone who doesn't mind being behind the scenes. That's
mm.
an important thing. Like they want to be, sometimes we call us chaos controllers. So we're making sure, like, and it's like if you don't know what the chief of staff is doing, that's a good thing because
Yes.
you know
Well,
that the chaos is
you were
being
my
controlled.
chief of staff starting out with Arlen was here,
Mhm.
and now you're the CEO. But I didn't know this. I didn't even know that there were these terms that you were the chaos controller. And so
Okay.
that's just so true.
There's lots of fun terms actually for the chief of staff. So there's the gatekeeper
Yeah.
because they're sort of the person, and sometimes there's some friction in organizations with this. But the reality is, the CEO can't be on every call, they can't respond to every email. And so the chief of staff can serve as a gatekeeper. It's kind of like, you know, restricting what's coming in, sometimes taking what's coming in and then filtering it to what the CEO needs to know. Another word for us is the air traffic controller. So there's so much going on. The CEO cannot be in every department every single day. So the chief of staff steps in that
Yeah.
role.
So it seems like, and based on experience, it seems like it's someone who has some organizational skills, and if not, is willing to learn, is willing to always get better, but also has some interpersonal skills. Someone who likes talking to people and going out and having, working on opportunities for the company and for the individual.
Yeah, the chief of staff often also serves as like the external liaison. So they are someone who the CEO can trust to represent them, and then they can go out, they can have the meetings, and then bring back what information is most important to the CEO, what information can I figure out on my own and not, put on their plate. But also the relationship building part is so important because a lot of times when a chief of staff comes in, some organizations are not familiar with it, they're not used to the role, and they think, well, I just want to go directly to the CEO. The chief of staff can build those relationships that the CEO may not have the time to, or may not want to give favoritism to one department or one team over the other. And the chief of staff really has to be a relationship person.
And this role, this chief of staff role, is one of the fastest growing roles because people are figuring it out. And there are so many companies that are hitting 1 million plus in annual revenue that can now afford a chief of staff fractionally or full time. Fractionally, of course, go to hirerunner.co, full time, etc. Um, but there's so many creators. There's so many people who are influencers, but also just creators who have reached that milestone and they may need a chief of staff and don't even realize it. So it's
Yeah.
about them learning that. So anyone watching should know that. But it's this, what is the career potential, I guess, for people who want to be a chief of staff?
So there's a lot of opportunities right now. And I think you're right. There's a lot of founders and creators and business owners who realize they need an executive assistant. They don't realize that they need a chief of staff. Or they might also think they need a project manager. What they really need is a chief of staff. And because there's not as much awareness yet about the role, they're putting people in positions that aren't suited for them. And there's sometimes friction, frustration around that. But yeah, so for creators, for example, they have these great big visions, they have these amazing ideas, and they need someone who can just stick to the prioritization. That's another really important thing for chiefs of staff, being able to prioritize. Hey, I know you said you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to do a million things. That's amazing. What's the most important thing? Let's get this in order. Let's have the organization. Let's have the project management piece in there. And then going out and communicating with the necessary partners to make it happen.
If someone is interested in becoming a chief of staff, they think they have the pieces needed, the qualities needed, but they're not exactly sure exactly what to do day one starting their job or how to find jobs. You have a certification program that
Mhm.
is new, that has been helping a lot of people already. Can you talk a little bit about the certification program and what made you want to start it?
Yeah, you brought up a really good point is that a lot of people want to become chiefs of staff. They hear about the role, they realize, okay, that would be perfect for me. I love being involved in a lot of things. I love interacting with people. I love having strategic impact in the work that I'm doing. But there is that question of how do I become one? How do I pivot into it? And then when I do, what does the first 30, 60, 90 days look like? And so that is part of the reason that I created the course because as much as we're gatekeepers in the role of chief of staff, I didn't want to gatekeep the role itself. And I
Mm.
think that there's so many people who could be incredible as chiefs of staff, a lot of people from project management backgrounds, HR, operations, executive assistants, especially senior level executive assistants, they would make great chiefs of staff and they could have amazing impact for these founders if only they could get over that hump. And so the course, it gives the competence to do it, right? There's a lot of skills that are needed to become a chief of staff. You don't need an MBA, but there are a lot of skills. You have to have a basic understanding of data analysis, a foundational understanding of finances, understanding how to read cash flow statements and P&Ls. So there are those skills that the course helps to fill, or the gaps that the course helps to fill. But also I do feel like it gives people the confidence to then go in and say to their boss or to a hiring manager, hey, I've taken this course, I've received this certification, and I'm completely qualified to serve in this role for you. And another really interesting thing is that a lot of people are creating the role for themselves. So they might work in a company that doesn't have a chief of staff. They might work in a company that's never heard of a chief of staff, but they can take the course, they get all of the information. And then we've even created templates to help them like provide the templates to their boss and say, hey, here's what a chief of staff does. I'm taking this training. In the next 3 to 6 months, I'd love to discuss how I can be promoted into this role and what that would look like. And the course also walks through, we have a whole lesson on your first 30, 60, 90 days in the role, to make sure that you're really set up for success because it is so important. It's a great job. It obviously was an amazing launch pad for me. And so I just want to create that opportunity for other people.
If you're interested in that course, you can look below at the link in the description and we'll hook you up there. Going back to the role that you had with me, um, what were a couple of things that you, I guess, got to do or got to see that made you really enjoy the position? And then let's talk about some of the more stressful times too.
Yeah, so the best part is that you see everything.
Mhm.
So it does give you a newfound appreciation for your boss
Yeah.
because you see everything that they're dealing with, all of the different departments externally and internally that they're having to navigate. And the most exciting thing is knowing that you're playing an impactful role in keeping alignment. So when things come up, a lot of founders are in your audience and they'll attest to the fact that there's a lot of shiny objects that they can chase after. There's a lot of new ideas, new pivots. And when you're in that chief of staff role, you can help keep the train on track. That's what I like to say. Like, this is where we said we're going. Like, let's stay on. And does this help us get there faster, then great, we'll pick it up. Is it slowing us down? Is it a detour that we want to explore for any reason? So that's really the cool thing about being a chief of staff.
Yeah. And what's a stressful thing about being a chief of staff?
Um, that's a good question. It's probably that you don't have a certain output or a certain milestone that you're going for, because a lot of the stuff you're doing is intangible, the support that you're providing. So, for instance, if you're in sales, you can say you hit a certain sales goal, or if you're in customer support, you answered a certain number of tickets. But with the chief of staff role, it's a lot more ambiguous. And so it's a cool thing about it, but also sometimes can be stressful. But then when you look back, what I like to tell people is to collect an email folder of their wins. And so when they get that positive reinforcement about something, it may not tie specifically to a quantifiable metric, but it's still reaffirming that you're doing a great job and you're having an impact.
That's awesome. I really love what you were talking about within the course where you teach people how to either go find a new job and present that, or if they're already in a career in a company and they want to pivot and they know it'll be helpful to that organization, this is how you have that conversation. I think that's invaluable. And your course has something like, as of the time of this recording, something like 12 hours worth of curricula, and you have tests and templates and different things. So just so people know, when they take the course, they have to watch the full video. They get to watch the full video, and then they take a test, and then they can move forward in it. And that's how you're certified.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways that people do online courses. I know some are just here's the video and like have fun with it, and that's great. This course is self-paced, but it is sort of locked by module. So I want to make sure that throughout the 5 modules, you're really getting the value from it and taking it seriously, because that's otherwise it's not going to matter for you. It's not going to help you in the future if you're just kind of here and there looking at videos. So there, it is locked. You do have to pass the quizzes after each lesson. Um, and yes, there is a little over 12 hours of video curriculum. And then there's a few articles you read. And for some people, that might sound like a lot of work. But when you realize that this is going to help make it easier for you to get into a really impactful role, that's a launch pad for all kinds of different types of roles. It's going to give you the knowledge and the understandings that you need, even as entrepreneurs. You need to know this sort of wide breadth of business practices that you'll learn in this course. It is worth it to, take those quizzes, make sure that you're really comprehending the information.
If someone is a founder of a company, or they work in the company in the C-suite or elsewhere, and they know someone who might benefit from this, or someone within their own organization, is this a good certification to bring in-house?
Yeah, it's definitely something. I was actually just speaking to someone about this because they have a team of chiefs of staff. They're a large organization. All of the C-suite executives and the VPs have chiefs of staff. And so bringing it in just to make sure everyone has those foundational skills, right? And that everyone, you can feel confident that everyone is up to a certain par, to say. So yeah, so it's definitely something, and that's another, we have a lot of free resources on the website too, because that's another thing. We offer, like, we have a template for a letter that you can request the funds from your company. So
Mm.
some companies have professional development funds. A lot of employees don't realize that. And even if there's not a formal professional development fund in an organization, you can go to your boss, you can go to your HR and request that they fund or sponsor your certification. And so we have that template in the website to make it easier for people.
Yeah. And as we close out, can you explain one more time why someone who is a founder, an entrepreneur, would want to take this course or even be certified as a chief of staff if they're working on their own company? Why would they want to work for someone else at their company?
So, as we all know, we can't just solely rely on outside funding. A lot of times we need to bootstrap as founders. We have to fund our own ventures. And so, if you have to get a job anyways, so that you can start saving money for your own venture, your own company that you're building, your startup, then the chief of staff role is really a great profession to get into because you're learning business from the top down. You're working with the CEO shoulder to shoulder. You're providing strategic advice. You're their sounding board. So you're hearing everything going on. You're also working cross departmentally. So you think about you're a founder, you're an aspiring founder, an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, and one day you're going to be the CEO, you're going to be the boss, hopefully of a very large company. Having that chief of staff experience is going to let you see exactly what's happening in each department in a way that a lot of positions don't give you access to. And you're going to learn leadership skills because the chief of staff is a leader in an organization. They're making decisions, they're having an impact. And so there's just having that wide breadth of operational background, financial background, data, all of those things that you do learn in this course. So whether or not you become a chief of staff, whether or not chief of staff is your only destination, it's going to be beneficial for you, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see people graduate from this. People are already like giving so much great feedback over the next few months and years. It's just going to be amazing to watch this. I know that with my company, hirerunner.co, we're using your certification as like a badge of honor. If someone is certified, then they're going to have that literal badge on the app or within Hire Runner. So I think I could see a lot of that happening over time as well. Anything else we need to know as we close out for anyone who's thinking about it, maybe who's on the fence as well?
Yeah, well, just in regards to what you mentioned about people with the Elevation Chief of Staff Training certification are going to have a special feature on Runner. That really is important to me and it really is meaningful for me because I want people to know that when they hire a chief of staff, especially one that's been trained by Elevation, they have that confidence that this is someone who knows what they're doing, who also has support. A lot of times the chief of staff role is siloed. You're working by yourself, you're not on anyone else's team per se. And it can get a little bit lonely, but we provide coaching to all of our students. It's unlimited coaching for a year after enrollment. So people who hire and bring on an Elevation Chief of Staff certified Chief of Staff, they're getting that confidence that the person knows what they're doing and has support behind them.